A deadline for FARC rebels in Colombia to hand over weapons as part of the country's historic peace accord has been extended. May 30 was the original date, but the government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia have agreed that guerrilla fighters will have a further 20 days to surrender weapons to UN observers. The president says this change in date does not affect in any way the firm decision and the clear commitment from the government and the FARC to honor our accord. The international mechanism to monitor and verify will continue to exert its role until we certify that the last of FARC weapons have been turned over and removed from our national territory. Various logistical problems have slowed down the FARC demobilization process, which came into force after last year's peace accord put an end to more than 50 years of conflict.
Panama's former military ruler, General Manuel Noriega, has died aged 83. He'd had surgery in March to remove a brain tumor but suffered a hemorrhage and had been in a coma. Noriega, who ruled Panama from 1983 to 1989, spied for the CIA until the United States invaded and toppled his corrupt government, ending a criminal career that saw him working with drug traffickers like Pablo Escobar. He was initially sentenced in the United States in 1992, but was in custody for murder in Panama when he died. The moment a car bomb explodes outside a packed ice cream parlor in Baghdad. At least 13 people have died, many more are injured. So-called Islamic State has claimed responsibility, saying the attack targeted a gathering of Shiites. Some reports say a suicide bomber was in the vehicle. It happened in a mainly Shiite district of the Iraqi capital, where families had gathered after sundown to break their fast during Islam's holy month of Ramadan. Amid the panic and confusion afterwards, reports spoke of a young girl with a bow in her hair wandering the scene looking dazed. It's another sign of the Sunni extremist group's determination to spread terror, despite coming under increasing pressure, notably in Mosul.
All eyes were on body language when French President Emmanuel Macron met for the first time with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. The discussion was described as frank and open, though it did not cover allegations of Russian meddling in the French presidential election. Concerning Russia's alleged intervention into any election, we haven't discussed it. President Macron hasn't shown any interest in this, and from my side there is nothing to discuss. It's a non-existing issue. Under the gilded ceilings of the Versailles Palace, the two leaders had plenty other touchy subjects to cover, from the war in Syria to human rights. We've discussed the case of LGBT people in Chechnya, but also the case of NGOs in Russia. On these topics, I laid out very precisely to President Putin the expectations of France, and we have agreed to follow these issues together extremely closely. Macron also said he and Putin agreed it was time for a new round of peace talks on Ukraine that would revive the so-called Normandy format, bringing together the leaders of Russia, Germany, France, and Ukraine.
Manchester railway station has reopened after last Monday's suicide bombing of neighbouring Manchester Arena that killed 22 people. The concert venue's foyer, which is connected to the station via an elevated bridge, was damaged alongside other parts of the station after Salman Abedi detonated a bomb which appeared to contain carefully packed shrapnel.
Well, I think this is an incredibly important milestone this morning, the reopening of Victoria Station. Perhaps more than anything, this is a sign that life goes on and the city is returning to a form of normality. I say a form of normality because, of course, you know, it's still very much at the front of our minds. We think of the families who lost loved ones. We think of those who are injured in hospital.
A British broadcaster has obtained security footage which purports to show Salman Abedi buying goods in a local grocery store just days before the devastating blast at the Ariana Grande concert. As the investigation into his final movements continues, police have also released a picture of Abedi that appears to show him wheeling a blue suitcase on the day of the suicide attack. Detectives have urged the public to come forward with any information if they think they've spotted him, but they've stressed the luggage is different from the one used in the bombing. A total of 16 people have been arrested in connection with the attack.
More than 500,000 people in Sri Lanka have been displaced by devastating floods following several days of torrential rain. At least 180 people have died, and search and rescue teams are looking for more than 100 who are missing. While the streets of Colombo are underwater, towns and villages on the Indian Ocean island have suffered landslides. In Ratnapura, 70 kilometres from the capital, more than 70 have been killed and the numbers are still rising. The waters have receded, but the mud has done untold damage. This resident says there were trees here. This was a beautiful mountain with thickets. We never thought such a disaster would happen. The two houses which are up there are deep under the mud. We're used to rains and flooding in our area, but this year it's been unusual, he says. We've never experienced such floods in 70 years in this village. Efforts to reach isolated areas have been hampered by the conditions, although tens of thousands of people have been relocated. Amid warnings of a looming health threat from potentially fatal diseases, international organizations and several countries have pledged aid.
Televidente, acompanha-me para um espaço comercial e ora nós está back e deporte com nosso colega Carlos Reiter.
Diamonds Craft, situado na banda de supermercado